Coming to you live from the Spit Studios in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, this is the Spit Sports Show. Now, as I've mentioned in the past few episodes, this is the season before the season in the NFL. This is the season where all of the media, all of the fans, they make their predictions about what's going to happen during this NFL season. It's set in stone. What I say here, I'm sticking with to the end of the year. Because one of my freaking pet peeves is when I make a really good prediction and it turns out to be right, and you guys in the freaking comments go, yeah, you didn't say that, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's on record this time. All right, you guys are going to be able to look back, see what I said, see how right I was, and then apologize for saying I was going to be wrong. All right, so that's what I'm going to do in this episode. I am going to go through every single division in the NFL, tell you what I think the order is going to be, tell you which teams I think are going to make the playoffs, and then in the next episode, I'm going to do my playoff bracket with the teams I think are going to make the playoffs, along with a new take that I have that I'm super excited to show you guys. But for now, stick with the divisions, and we're going to start in the AFC with the AFC South. So the bottom of the AFC South is obviously the Houston Texans. They quite frankly stink. Their coach is pretty good. I like DeMeco Ryans a lot. I think he's a really good motivator, and I think he's a really good, really, really good defensive mind. However, their quarterback is not a top 25 quarterback in the NFL. Their receivers are lacking. Their offensive line is bottom 15. Their defense has a severe lack of talent to the point where I think I can maybe name two players on that defense. They're in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. DeMeco Ryans definitely deserves better, but he hasn't gotten better. Definitely Texans at the bottom of the AFC South. In third come the Indianapolis Colts. Jonathan Taylor being out for the first 4 weeks, to me, is just the nail in their coffin. And if he comes back, which is a huge if, is he really going to want to give 100% to this organization who has kind of screwed him over by A, not giving him a deal, and B, not trading him to a team who will? I don't think he's exactly going to come back and start running full force for this organization. Pittman, their best receiver, is more of a 2 than he is a 1, and the rest of their weapons are just kind of Jags. Alex Peckman, and I can't really name anyone else on their receiving core, to be totally honest with you. Their best player is out. Raw talent, rookie QB with a lack of weapons and an above average O-line, but not spectacular, is not a great recipe. I think he had 17 touchdowns and 9 interceptions last year at Florida. I expect him to be around that same kind of numbers in the NFL this year, except probably with a few more interceptions. And that is not a recipe for success. I think the Colts are going to finish in third. Second place, the Tennessee Titans. Top 5 coach in Vrabel and a veteran quarterback put them ahead of the Colts, in my opinion, with Richardson starting there. But their weapons are weak. After getting rid of A.J. Brown, they haven't been able to figure out the receiver position. Derrick Henry, their best player, is getting older, and he's such a physical back. You've got to wonder how those hits are going to add up on his body. 28 years old now, gets 100-plus touches, carries every single season. Their defense was 23rd last year, and I didn't see them make many significant upgrades to improve that. Vrabel's so good, I think they're going to be better than Indianapolis and still come second, but no playoffs for them. But there are going to be the playoffs for the number 1 team in the division, Jacksonville. Ended off 7-2 last season, with the only losses being to the potential dynasty Chiefs and the future Super Bowl champion Detroit Lions. Yeah, I said that. Calvin Ridley is awesome. Love the addition of him as their number 1. Christian Kirk, phenomenal number 2. And Zay Jones, I think, is a perfect number 3 option. Travis Etienne is a great all-purpose back, especially with his connection with Lawrence going back to Clemson. He's going to catch a bunch of dump-offs and get a bunch of first downs. And Tank Bigsby is there for the short yardage situations, the 3rd and 1s, the goal line carries. He is, well, built like a tank. And he can take on a lot of defenders, break a lot of tackles, and I think he's going to be able to get into the end zone. Second year for Trevor Lawrence and the Doug Peterson system, another full off season to get adjusted to it. I think the Jags are going to be awesome this season. I definitely have them in the playoffs and winning around 11 games. On to the AFC North, who in last place is the worst franchise in the NFL, the Cleveland Browns. They have the worst coach in the division. I think Stefanski's a decent coach, but compared to Harbaugh, Tomlin, and even Zach Taylor, who's been to the championship game the last 2 years, he's clearly the worst. They have a quarterback who hasn't looked good since before COVID was a thing. Their defense is flatly weak outside of Myles Garrett, especially their pass rush. Once teams focus in on Myles Garrett, which they assuredly will do, it's going to be hard for Cleveland to generate pressure. And they have pretty weak pass catching options. Amari Cooper is a number two in number one's clothing. He's got the talent to be a number one, but he's never really had the mentality or that go get him that a lot of the number one receivers have. Donovan Peoples-Jones is another one of their top three weapons, and their other weapon is Elijah Moore, who was so good that the Jets quit on him as soon as Aaron Rodgers got there. They also lost Kareem Hunt, so it's going to be a lot more on Nick Chubb's plate when they used to have the best running back duo in the league. So their run game probably won't be the same. There's a lot of issues with the Browns this year. I have them in last place. In third place, the Baltimore Ravens. I've already made my position on the Ravens perfectly clear why I don't think their new offense will work under their new OC, Todd Monken. I think Greg Roman was a perfect fit for this Ravens offense, a perfect fit for Lamar, and he's gone now. And installing a pro-style offense, I think, will hurt the Ravens much more than it will help them. This is the least amount of talent on defense I can remember the Ravens having since I've been alive, it feels like. They'll still be pretty good because Harbaugh is a very good defensive coach. Even though he comes from special teams, he does help a lot on that defense. They're going to be good. And their new weapons, who everyone's so excited about, one of them is Odell is 2 years older, hasn't played football in 2 years, coming off yet another major surgery. This one to his ACL. I don't see him being a dominant wide receiver too, like he was in LA. And the running backs are just average. The reason their run game was so good was because of Greg Roman and obviously Lamar, but Lamar is Lamar. He's going to make plays. Running backs are average. I don't see their defense making that many plays. Ravens in third. Steelers at number 2. Won 9 games last year, believe it or not, with one of the worst quarterback situations in the league. If a quarterback is worth anything in this league, he makes a significant jump from his first year to his second year. I don't think Kenny Pickett is Terry Bradshaw, but I think he's got enough. I think he's got enough to make the Steelers a 10-11 win team. TJ Watt, their best player, is back after missing 9 games last year. And they have a good O-line to protect him. I love Deontay Johnson. I think he could take another step to be a definitive wide receiver one. Pickens is a great third option. I like their tight end. They've got a lot of great things going in Pittsburgh. Tomlin's also never had a losing record in his career. I see no reason why that changes this year. I've got the Steelers in second, only to the Bengals, who this one is pretty simple. They have the best quarterback who is throwing to the best wide receiver trio. Chase, Higgins, and Boyd are unbelievable. And they've got the pedigree. They've been to the championship game the last 2 years. They're usually not a dynamo in the regular season. But Joe Burrow should be healthy week 1. I think their defense is going to be better. They played a lot of young guys last year who are only going to improve with another year of experience under their belt. I see no reason why the Bengals don't take this division. So to reiterate, I've got the Browns in last place, followed by the Ravens, followed by the Steelers, who I have making the playoffs, and the Bengals, who I obviously have making the playoffs. AFC West. I've already done this on a previous episode, so I'm not going to go into detail, but if you didn't see that episode, which you definitely should, it's on Russell Wilson and the one reason why he's regressed. I have the Raiders in last, followed by the Broncos in third, followed by the Chargers, who I have in the playoffs, followed by the Chiefs, who I obviously have in the playoffs. AFC East. In last place is the New England Patriots. If this was 1985, I might be picking the Patriots to win the Super Bowl. They've got an the greatest defensive coach of all time, great personnel back there, exceptionally disciplined, a quarterback who won't make mistakes, and a running back who can be a consistent bell cow and keep the defense off balance. Unfortunately, this is not 1985, and the Patriots have a severe lack of weapons. Hunter Henry has been a flat out bust since they've signed him. He's never really been able to recapture what he had in LA. Juju Smith-Schuster as their potential wide receiver one when he was the wide receiver 3 in Kansas City and the wide receiver 3 in Pittsburgh, I don't see as working. Their offensive line is above average for sure, but I don't see the receivers being able to get consistent separation, which is how Mac Jones can be the most effective. He's very good at ball placement when his receivers have about a foot or so of separation. They're not going to get that with the Patriots. I think their defense is going to be good, but not good enough to carry that offense. I've got them in dead last. Third, this was really tough, actually, between these next two teams. I went back and forth on this a lot, but I ended up putting the Jets in number 3. It was between them and the next team I'm about to mention for who was going to be third, but eventually I went with the Jets. Their own line scares me. Rodgers in Green Bay, you can say as much as you want about his weapons, about how they didn't spend first-round picks on receivers and all of that, but he was always protected behind a very good offensive line. This is the first year he's going to have probably a below-average O-line, and he's 40 years old. That scares me as a combination. Robert Saleh, I don't know if he's a good coach or not. So far, I flatly don't think so. He's been with the Jets for 2 years now, and he's got a way under 500 record. I think their weapons, who everyone's been raving about, are eerily similar to what Rodgers had last year in Green Bay when they missed the playoffs. So obviously, with the Jets, you have Garrett Wilson as your wide receiver 1, who is better than Christian Watson, who was his wide receiver 1 last year. So you give that to the Jets. The Jets wide receiver 2 this year is Allen Lazard, who is not as good as Romeo Doubs, who was the Packers wide receiver 2 last year. The Packers wide receiver 3 last year was Allen Lazard, who is better than Mecole Hardman, who is his current wide receiver 3. I think the Jets are overrated. I don't have them making the playoffs. And I think Rodgers is going to struggle a lot behind that subpar O-line. Second is the Bills. You were probably expecting the Dolphins to be here, but I think it's going to be the Bills. I see a total step back year coming. Almost had them missing the playoffs. I think Allen can only carry this offense so far as both the best passer and rusher on the team. There's no great defensive players on this team besides a 34-year-old Von Miller who is missing the first 4 weeks thanks to the knee surgery he had last year. He's not going to be the same as he was, even on the Rams, where he wasn't the same as where he was in Denver. I think where there's smoke, there's fire. And with the whole Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs drama, they can say there's nothing going on as much as they want. But when there's this much chatter about it and this much talk, you've got to assume there's something going on behind the scenes. And the last time we saw them together, we saw Stephon Diggs showing up Josh Allen, yelling at him on the sideline. I don't think Josh is going to forget that as much as he wants the media to think he will. Bills in number 2. Dolphins win the division. I'm so excited to watch the Dolphins this year. They've got a great offensive coach. Mike McDaniels has proven that even though he's not quite Kyle Shanahan, he is from that same mold. Awesome at drawing up plays. They obviously have weapons galore. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle might be the best wide receiver duo in the world. They have an above average O-line. Vic Fangio coming in as their new defensive coordinator. Him plus Bradley Chubb plus Xavier Howard plus Jalen Ramsey when he gets back is going to be a stupendous defense, I think. Potentially top 10. And Tua, his big question is his health, right? We know he's accurate. We know he can play the system perfectly. But it seems like he's done a lot of work on trying to stay healthy. And what I mean by that is I saw a video from last year of him getting pushed down and his head just whips back into the turf. Whereas this year, similar play, he gets pushed down and he works on rolling, making sure his head doesn't hit the ground. using his shoulders to absorb the contact. It seems like he's really worked on making sure he doesn't get another concussion because he knows, as well as I do, as well as the NFL does, his next concussion probably wouldn't just mean the end of his season. It might mean the end of his career. So I hope that doesn't happen. If he stays healthy, I definitely see the Dolphins winning this division. So again, Patriots in last, followed by the Jets, followed by the Bills, followed by the Dolphins, who will make the playoffs. I also have the Bills making the playoffs out of this division. On to the NFC. NFC South, by far the weakest division in this conference. I have the Panthers in last place. Rookie pocket quarterback, doesn't move a whole lot. Rookie pocket quarterback, plus a weak O-line, plus below average receivers. His top two weapons are Adam Thielen, who is 1,000 years old, and DJ Chark, who was the wide receiver 3 on the Lions last year. And you have a recipe for disaster. Don't see their defense getting much better. No real significant additions there. Their coach is no superstar. And overall, I just don't see a whole lot going on for this Carolina team. I have them in last. The Bucs are third. Maybe the best overall roster in this division, but their quarterback to me is still an issue. Whenever Baker Mayfield has expectations, except for that one magical run in Cleveland where he beat the Steelers in that playoff game, which I still can't get over, but that's a whole nother thing. He has crumbled, and he hasn't looked good when he's had expectations on his plate. When there's nothing on him, you better believe he's going to go out and throw a party. But there are some expectations on him coming in after Tom Brady. Their coach is not proven. I know Todd Bowles is an unbelievable defensive coordinator, but I have no reason to believe that he's a great head coach. Their pass rush is going to be weak, which is what Bowles is known for dialing up. He's very good with the pass rush. I don't think they have the talent to support his genius on that part of the defense. And overall, I don't think the Bucs are going to be that good. Third in this division. Saints, number 2. Most people have the Saints winning the division. I do not. They definitely have the best quarterback in the division, the most proven. And Cam Jordan is back, which Saints fans should be very excited about. Looks like he's going to be a Saint for life. But their weapons outside of Chris Olave are really lacking. Michael Thomas, there's no way he can be the same player that he was in that Offensive Player of the Year season. He hasn't been consistently on the field in about 3 years. He's had 2 ankle surgeries. And outside of him, they really don't have a wide receiver 4 or 5. Their next best receiver is probably best as a wide receiver 6. They have the worst coach in NFL history by record. And overall, I don't see the Saints being great this year. Their secondary is pretty weak. I've got them in second. Behind the Atlanta Falcons, who I have winning this division. So the only thing that really scares me about this team is Desmond Ridder. I haven't seen enough from him to think he's good enough to win a division. However, in this division, how weak it is and the weapons that he has around him, I think he's got a chance. Kyle Pitts, to me, is still a superstar. I know he had an exceptionally underwhelming rookie season. I think a lot of that has to do with the schemes that they had in the offense with trying to run more than they want to throw. I think they're going to throw a lot more this season with Ridder having a year under this system. I love Drake London. I think he's awesome. And Bijan Robinson has strong potential to be Offensive Rookie of the Year this season and potentially the rushing yards leader. The only thing about the Falcons that I'm not a fan of is Mac Hollins and Scotty Miller as wide receiver 2 and 3. So outside of that top guy in London, I don't see them having phenomenal pass catchers. But if they run, like I think they're going to run, they will be okay on offense. And I like their head coach, Arthur Smith, way more than I like the Saints head coach. Falcons win this division and make the playoffs. No other playoff teams from the NFC South. NFC North. Oh, this is a big one. This is a big one. I have the Bears, bottom of the division. So even though I have them at the bottom, I expect the Bears to be a lot better this season. And by a lot better, they won 3 games last year, 4 games. So it's better, but still not great. 6-7 wins for the Bears this season. They still have a weak O-line, a lack of talent on defense, even though I do like their defensive head coach a lot. They lost David Montgomery, 1,000-yard rusher from last year. They still have below average weapons. I love the DJ Moore pickup, but Claypool, with all the talent that he has underperformed in his career so far. And I think Fields is going to be running for his life again. I think they're good enough to win, like I said, 6-7 games, but that's still going to be bottom of this very tough division. Toughest in the NFC, probably. Number 3, the Vikings. So the Vikings, I still can't believe the stat. They won 11 one-score games last year. They were 11-0. That's not happening again. That is 1 in a million winning the lottery Powerball type of jackpot right there. Not happening again. All right. The defense is still one of the worst in the league. I understand Brian Flores is coming in as the defensive coordinator, but unfortunately, he can't actually play defense. They have a severe lack of talent on that side of the ball. And although I think their offense is going to be really good again with Jefferson and Jordan Addison coming in, Dalvin Cook is gone, 1,000-yard rusher from last year. I think Alexander Mattison, their new starter, is good enough, but he's not Dalvin Cook. So I think their running game is going to be lacking, which is going to allow defenses to focus more on Jefferson. I think the Vikings come in third in this division this year. Packers, number 2. So Love has looked good in his first few starts. Like, he really has. I mean, in the preseason this year, I think he's looked poised. I think LaFleur has done a really good job with him as an offensive coach and a seemingly quarterback whisperer. I love the running game. I think Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, now that Kareem Hunt is no longer on the Browns, are probably the best running back duo in the world. They have an underrated defense. Kenny Clark is still there. Their secondary with Jair Alexander is still solid. And I think this team is going to have a chip on their shoulder because of Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he's been talking all of this about how much of a dream it is to play for the New York Jets when he just played for the freaking Green Bay Packers, a cornerstone franchise. You love playing with the Jets so much? Oh, we'll show you. We'll show you what the Green Bay Packers are all about. I think the Packers are going to be good this season. I have them making the playoffs. I also have the winner of this division making the playoffs, the Detroit Lions, baby. 8-2 to end the year last year. The best O-line Detroit has had in decades. Amon-Ra St. Brown has been graded by Pro Football Focus as a top 5 receiver, and I think he's only going to continue that this year. Goff, when protected, we all know how I feel about him, is a top 10 passer in the NFL, undisputed. Completely rebuilt secondary, which was their main point of weakness last year. Their pass rush was fine. Their linebackers were actually above average. Their secondary was the worst in football by a mile. So what did they do? Well, they signed Emmanuel Mosley, CJ Gardner-Johnson, and Cam Sutton. All 3 of those corners are better than any corner they had on their roster last year. I see no reason why the Lions can't win 10, 11, 12 games, win the division, and go back to the playoffs for the first time since 2014. Lions win the NFC North. So again, I have the Bears, then the Vikings, then the Packers making the playoffs, and the Lions making the playoffs. On to the NFC West, which was the best division in football by a mile for about 3 years, but there's been a couple setbacks in this division. So the Cardinals, I obviously have in last place. They're seemingly trying to tank. They traded easily their most versatile defender, Isaiah Simmons, for pennies on the dollar. To be honest with you, there's nothing really good going on with this team. I think Kyler's upset with the situation. I think he's going to ask out of there at the end of the season. They're in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes, and they're probably going to win it, to be honest. Maybe the worst team in the NFL, the Arizona Cardinals. The Los Angeles Rams are third. Another Cooper Kupp hamstring setback in training camp, which is the worst possible news for the Rams, because outside of Kupp, their weapons are lacking at best. Tutu Atwell and Van Jefferson are their next 2 best receivers. Their offensive line is nowhere near as good as it was for those Super Bowl runs. It hasn't been the same since Whitworth retired. Their secondary is weak at best, and it seems like Stafford's elbow injury isn't an injury as much as it is a chronic thing, something he's just going to have to play through. And unfortunately, if you've played baseball, football, or any sport, which includes throwing, your elbow is a huge part of what you're trying to do during your throwing motion. Is it going to affect him? I think it will. Rams in third. Number 2 is the Seahawks. They have done pretty much everything right since Russell's left. They have drafted phenomenally well. I love Tariq Woolen in their secondary. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is an awesome addition to this already great receiving core with Metcalf and Lockett. I think they've got a top 10 coach in terms of motivator and schemes on the defense. However, only thing holding me back is their quarterback, Geno Smith. I think he's good. He's definitely proven that he's good, but he was nearly an MVP candidate in his first 8 weeks. But in his last 8 weeks, he went 3-5. His passer rating dropped significantly. It was bottom 15 in the NFL. And he didn't really look the same once teams got tape on him. I don't think he's going to completely regress, but I definitely don't think he's going to put up the same numbers he did last year. Seahawks at number 2. The roster also, in general, just isn't as good as who I have at number 1, who are the San Francisco 49ers. You can say what you want about Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy, but they're confident enough in him that they got rid of Trey Lance for pretty much nothing. I think Debo is going to have a bounce back year. He said it himself last year. He was not in the right mental and physical state to play his best football. McCaffrey, another full offseason under the Shanahan system for him to better understand what he's trying to do with those flat passing games and those quick outs. Kittle is still a top 5 tight end, and their defense is always top 10 with Fred Warner being the captain on that side of the ball. I think they've got a really, really good chance to be the best team in the NFC, and except for the Lions. But the Niners are going to be awesome. 53-man to 53-man. They might have the best roster in the entire league. I've got them winning that division. So in that division, to reiterate, I've got the Cards in last, Rams, Seahawks making the playoffs, and San Fran making the playoffs. NFC East. Probably the most talked about division because of 2 teams in it, but bottom of the division is obviously the Commanders. I've never seen a coach for 10 years and the jury still be out about whether he's a good coach or not. I know Ron Rivera is okay, but he's only really had one great year, and that was that MVP season with Cam where they went 15-1. Their quarterback, Sam Howell, is a bottom 10 quarterback in the league. They didn't give Chase Young his 5th-year option, which is just mind-boggling to me. And all in all, outside of Terry McLaurin, I don't believe in the Commanders' weapons or their running backs. I think they come in last pretty easily. Giants, number 3. I think they have one of the best up-and-coming coaches in the world and nothing else, to be totally honest with you. I think Daniel Jones is Kirk Cousins, except worse throwing and a little bit more athleticism. I think Saquon is awesome, but with another year of hits under his belt, and we know what his injury history is, I have questions about him staying healthy. And their defense is good in the pass rush, but in the secondary, incredibly weak. And I think good passing teams like the Cowboys and the Eagles in their division are going to be able to dice them up. I don't have them making the playoffs this year. I think that was kind of a one-time thing with Daniel Jones, and I think they should look to move on from Jones after the season. Giants in third. Second are the Cowboys. Cowboys are going to be really good this season. Really, really good. I love the addition of Brandon Cooks as the 2 behind CeeDee Lamb. I think Gallup's a perfect number 3. I think Pollard, although I don't see him as a bell cow back, is going to be a really, really good primary back with Deuce Vaughn kind of cleaning up those short yardage situations because he's got such a compact body because he's about 5'2". So he can run through some defenders on the goal line, pick up some short yardage. They obviously still have the best defensive player in football, in my opinion, Micah Parsons. I think they've got about an above average O-line, and all in all, I think the Cowboys have a really solid roster this year. I'm also a huge believer in Trayvon Diggs. He's made improvements in his coverage every single year, and he's always been a ball hawk. Cowboys are going to be really good, but their roster, 53-man to 53-man, like the Seahawks to the Niners, their roster isn't as good as the Eagles, who I have winning the division. Hurts he gets better every year as a passer. Maybe the best work ethic I've seen in a quarterback, maybe the best leader I've seen in a quarterback in a while. And I think the Eagles roster is the same, if not better than last year. Darius Slay coming back on the defense. They still have Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox rushing the passer. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, outside of Hill and Waddle, might be the best wide receiver duo in the league. And overall, I see no reason why the Eagles regress this year, other than their head coach. But I think he's good enough. I think their head coach is good enough to coach this roster to another 12, 13 win season, which is going to be enough to win the division. Eagles and Cowboys make the playoffs out of the NFC East. So, with all of that said, I want to know your thoughts. How do you think the divisions are going to go in the NFL? Like I said before, I'm going to do my full playoff bracket along with the take next episode. But I want to know your thoughts. Do you have the Saints over the Falcons? Do you have the Cowboys over the Eagles? Do you have the Vikings not in third place in the NFC North? I don't see how you could, but do you? Thank you again so much for all of the support. I haven't been doing this podcast for too long, but since I started, I've fallen in love with it. And I've been able to make it a very consistent part of my routine. And the responses and how you guys have been watching and commenting and all of that has just been unbelievable. So thank you so much for helping make this dream come true. Enough with the sentimental stuff. This has been the Spit Sports Show. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.